Hey, what's up guys, it's Latitude. I've been getting a lot of questions on how to do Duo Root of Nightmares, so I'm going to be making a guide for newer players or players with experience who need some guidance to complete this duo. So for the first encounter, Survive the Onslaught, I have two recommended loadouts for each shop. The first person is going to be soloing the nodes, so you're going to want an Eager-Edged Sword and Divinity, and the other person is going to be soloing the Tormentors, so you want anything crit based, like izanagis or a linear, just to be killing the Tormentors quickly. The strategy for this is pretty simple. You're going to want to complete the nodes in the first section before the Tormentor dies, and you don't actually want to kill him. So the idea for each area is that you're going to leave the Tormentor alive from the previous section and kill him in the beginning of the next one. So you're going to see on the screen right now, I'm going to leave this Tormentor from the first area and we're going to kill him when Sweeping Terror comes up. So since I'm on nodes, I'm just going to hang out where the next one starts and I'm going to div the Tormentor. We're going to kill the Tormentor and then I can start running the nodes in this area. You only need to kill one Tormentor until the final phase, I'm going to call it, so I'm going to put the map up, and you only need one Tormentor in phase 2 and 3, and then you might need 2 in phase 4. But for the first area, you're going to leave that Tormentor, and for the next areas, you're going to want to leave the Tormentor for the area in front of it. The strat for this is pretty simple. Use whatever you think is best, and get to the second encounter. For the second encounter, enter the root or Scission. I would recommend using the loadout on the screen. You can pair this with anything you want. You don't need to use Osteo. You can use Trend Eagle, you can use Arbalist, basically anything you want for clearing ads. In terms of strategy, there's two things that you can do. The first strategy would consist of just completing whatever node you start on. So if you start on light side, you'll complete light entirely, and if you start on dark side, you'll complete dark entirely. The gameplay on the screen is going to showcase the recommended strategy where me and my teammates share the buffs on both sides. The very first node in the sequence is always going to be across from where you start. So you start the encounter by grabbing, for example, dark and going across. Now in the clip, I'm going to grab light and do the light node on the side that I'm on, and then grab it and go across to do the node on the opposite side. My teammate does the same thing of doing the node on their side and then grabbing the buff and coming across to my side. Once we both cross and we call out that we're dunked to the buff, we can grab the buff on the side that we're on, complete the node on the side that we're on, then go back, grab the buff on the side we're on and go across. Doing this will complete the encounter. You only have to complete it within the timer of the encounter, and you can kill all the ads at the end as you have an infinite timer at the end. Now in this video I am well skating, although it is not required at all for this encounter. You can use the Bungie intended launch pads, but I really would not recommend using those as sometimes they kill you or send you downwards. If you do intend on using them, just make sure you're holding S into the back of the platform in order to get launched across. Once both sides are complete, you can either both help each other shoot the ads, or you can just solo the ads. Either way, it's not too bad, and you're going to have a pretty easy time doing this encounter as long as you know where the nodes are. Explicator of planets is definitely the hardest part about this Lowman. Because of the high ad density in the mechanics, it can definitely be a struggle for anybody trying this for the first time. I'm going to put the recommended loadouts up, but the main takeaway from this is to keep the fragments and aspects the same. You can swap the grenade and class ability, however if you swap grenade and fragments between loadouts you will lose all of your abilities as well as your super. In terms of ad clear, using sunbracers is really good because you can eat your grenade and use your Phoenix dive for 5 seconds of restoration. You can keep this restoration up infinitely as long as you get kills with solar abilities or solar weapons. Using Ember of Empyrean like this is really helpful and can be really useful for ad clear. As for player 2, they can use the same thing, but instead of a legendary rocket with demo explosive, they can use Galahorn or Two-Tailed Fox. I would really recommend one player to have an explosive light demo rocket or a demo frenzy rocket if possible. This encounter mechanically is very straightforward, although I'm going to be going through a few things that you probably don't know about this encounter. It's possible to do all planets in one phase by using an Eager Sword, although I'm not going to be talking about that strat in the video, as I think it is significantly harder than doing it the way that is on the screen now. Essentially, you want to kill all the adds in middle, make sure the Centurions are dead, then kill a Colossus on your side. In this video, I'm going to be picking up the one that's different on my side, and going to my teammate's side and picking up his. Now this strategy is very straightforward. We just trade the planets like in a 6-man, but instead of doing all 4 at once, we do the top 2 and then the bottom 2 after we do the top 2. So here I'm going to bank at the side that my teammate called out, and then I'm going to shoot the vow symbol like door opener thing in the middle. This ends planetary shift early and gives us more time for later. For getting to damage, I'm going to let the video play out and show you how I'm doing it, while explaining some of the important things about the adds in this encounter. When you kill the phalanx in middle, 2 more phalanxes will spawn, and killing those with the scions next to it will cause a centurion to spawn. The centurion is the cabal in middle with the orange shield. Killing that add will spawn the colossuses, the 4 around the map. Making sure that both centurions are dead is very important, because killing one centurion will spawn in all 4 colossus. If you kill the centurion on the left side, but not the centurion on the right side, you will not be able to pick up the planets on the right side of the map. And that is even if you kill the colossuses. So ad clear in this encounter is very important, which is why I recommend sunbracers. Although you could use anything, including waveframes, or anything else, other abilities, starfire, anything that you can use to kill the adds will do. Once the index planets reveal themselves, this part is the same as the 6-man, but instead of 3 people bringing planets to middle, you have only 2 people. Kill the Centurions in middle, kill the Colossus, and bank the planets. Since this is the same as the 6-man, I'm going to mention a couple things that you might not know about DPS. Specifically for Explicator, he will never go to the same 2 colored planets twice. So in this example we have light, dark, light. Therefore the damage will go from light to dark to light. It will never go light to light. It's also very important to mention that you can place a well in the center of the map. Going to the plates gives you a buff for about 7 seconds that allows you to DPS from wherever you want. Knowing that, you can place a well in middle and use all 3 plates in one well. It's also important to note that if you do not hit the damage threshold, you will lose a plate. A lot of the times, he will go from light, and then he'll go back to that light plate because you did not hit the threshold. It is really weird about this boss, but you must hit threshold if you want to do really good damage. Another thing to mention about this boss is if you don't hit the final stand damage, he will go to final stand anyway. That means if you are really low on damage or really behind, you can still make it up in final stand. And final stand is about a minute long, so you have plenty of time to make it up. Another thing to mention about this boss that's really weird is that it doesn't matter how long you're taking to do DPS. You can stand on the plate and your teammate can run and get ammo for a really long time, and it won't matter until you actually start shooting to push threshold. That is pretty much everything for this encounter. It is important to keep in mind most of it, but as long as you do the mechanics, you shouldn't really have an issue clearing this boss. It's important to mention that right now in Seasonal Defiance, fusion nades are really strong for this boss, but I'm sure that in the future you can use Izzy Rocket or just straight rockets and do the same damage. The 4th and final encounter in Nezarec isn't as bad as you would think, but you do want a loadout for running and a loadout for DPS, similar to the last encounter. One player should be on Felwinter's Helm and the other player can use Aeon Souls or anything else they want to run with. Both players should be using a sniper in order to help shoot the crits. Lead from Gold on Succession or Defiance of Yasmin is preferred, although if you don't have a good sniper, you can also use Ariana's Vow. Be sure to use any Siphon mod to make orbs for explosive light, as well as Scavenger for getting ammo after DPS. The other player will be using Galahorn and a sniper and a waveframe. Once you're at DPS, it's important that you have a loadout specifically made for damage with 3 surge mods and a time dilation on your class item. It's not in the graphic, but I'd also recommend using a loader mod corresponding with your rocket. Talk about DPS in a bit, but one player should be on Witherhorde, Explosive Light, Rocket, and the other player should be on Galahorn or Two-Tailed Fox. Now that you have your loadout set up, the way this encounter is going to work is one player is going to run on light side and one player is going to run on dark side. It's worth noting that light side is significantly harder than dark side, so if you can have the dark side players shoot the boss's crits, it would be beneficial, although you can shoot them from the light side. There are places and times that you want to be shooting the boss. If you shoot the crits too early, the shoulder crits that is, you might not get a reading on the refuge. You should be breaking the refuge crits after or right before hatred is taken. I'll show a couple spots from where you want to be shooting the boss from on each side, but you generally just want to be doing it behind cover where you're not going to be getting flinched. So on the left side, I would recommend grabbing the buff and then waiting for the crits to show up. After you shoot the crits, you can complete the first node. On the left, it's also worth mentioning that I'm behind this little pillar and I'm using this as cover from the legionaries. For dark side, I'd recommend grabbing the buff and going to the right plate. You can shoot the crits right before hatred comes up and then grab hatred as soon as it's up. After you have hatred, you want to do at least 3 to 4 nodes on both sides before heading over to the next area and doing a refuge. It's worth mentioning that if you don't know this, you cannot make a refuge on the active plate, meaning whatever plate you can grab the buff on, you can't make a refuge at that plate. I'd also recommend leaving the refuge plate once the boss's wings start glowing white. This will leave you with enough time to get away and stay alive for the phase. After the boss does the white mechanic, you want to wait a little bit until he jumps up and then you want to grab his hatred immediately. You just have to keep in mind like how long he's up there and just get a feel for the timing, but you always want to take the hatred immediately. When you see him go up, it's pretty safe to say you can just wait for his crit to come up and shoot it immediately. Another thing worth mentioning about shooting his crit is that if you start DPS while Nezarec is up top doing his hatred, he will not come down for DPS, and he'll start DPS from where he spawns in up top. To avoid this, just take his hatred and then start DPS. Once you've made it to DPS, it's important to have a good damage rotation to ensure that you kill him in 3 phases. He will not enter Final Stand if you do not hit the Final Stand threshold. Doing a Felwinter's Helm finisher is definitely recommended, although it's not necessary for killing this boss. If you are struggling with damage, I would recommend doing it though. In order to do it safely, you want to throw a healing nade or make sure you have full health while you do the finisher. You can also use class item mods that give you overshield while finishing. You'll generally want to do it anytime after both the nodes are done and the boss is within range. Finishing a Colossus will give a debuff for about 25 seconds, and the debuff is 30% with Felwinter's Helm, so it definitely helps a lot with DPS if you can get it off. As for the rotation, the player on Galley will just shoot Gallahorn, throw grenades, and then spam a fusion rifle when they're out of ammo. It's very important the person on Witherhoard Rocket does a proper rotation in order to ensure that they shoot all of their rockets. Also keep in mind that this boss does move a lot and you want to be hitting all your rockets. It's better to take an extra second to hit your rocket than miss it. It's also worth mentioning both players should be placing their wells so that you can both have surges for DPS. The other thing I will be talking about is Final Stand. At Final Stand, players may find it hard in order to kill the boss, but it is actually pretty easy as long as you save some rockets. You should have good enough damage from the previous 2 phases where you save at least 4 rockets per player for Final Stand. Making sure you have rockets for Final Stand is really important as you just won't hit the damage and you're gonna wipe. Make sure you're watching the boss's health bar because it will flash white once he enters Final Stand. If you shoot the boss too early, you're gonna be wasting rockets and it's gonna be really hard to clear Final Stand if you're down rockets that you needed. With all that being said, that's the full Duo Fresh Root of Nightmares guide. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment for me if I can do anything better for this, and if you have any questions, leave them and I'll try to respond to them. Thanks for watching.